All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowl Hunter Chronicles Podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. And right now, they've got their winter clearance event going on, 20 to 50% off everything over there on the website. And that is running through February 15th. So get over there, check that out, and check out our friends at Latitude Outdoors. They've got their outlet is back open. The profile platform pocket, knee pads, Ranger 33, and some of their classic and the method dump pouches. Those are over there on sale as well. And over there, if you don't find anything in the outlet, you can use code BHC to save 15% over there. And if you're in the area, if you're in the Muskegon area this weekend at the Muskegon Bowman Club, there is an ASA indoor shoot Saturday and Sunday. Saturday shoot times are 9 a.m., 12, and 3 p.m., and then Sunday shoot times are 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. So get over there, check that out. Members to shoot for the money is going to be $30, and then fun shooters, guests, and youth is going to be $15. Don't need to pre-register for that, so just show up 30 minutes prior, and it looks like they're going to have some refreshments, hot dogs, chips, all that sort of stuff over there. So going to be a good time. It's going to be the first one for the Muskegon Bowman. We've got a range over there up to 40 yards, so you're going to get some longer shots indoors. So going to be pretty cool. Excited to have that going on over there. And then this week's podcast, kind of a long time coming. Good friend of ours, Dante from Flambeau, the decoys, some of the fishing stuff. He's been super busy. You'll hear in the podcast he has had a lot go on with his family, and that's kept putting off the podcast, but it's kind of a good thing that it did, because this year he killed a monster deer, and the story is really cool. The kind of like the whole thing, because it isn't like Dante's a guy like us. Brad said it best when we were talking to him at ATA. I think that was the first time that Brad had met him. And, after hearing the story and everything, it's a guy, this is a story that could happen to any of us, like his hunting journey, kind of how it all went down. Really a super cool story, but a gigantic deer of a lifetime, and really happy to have him on here to tell the story. And I think you guys are going to really, really enjoy this fun conversation. Nate Roosevelt, he's on here because he's, our resident big buck, small property guy. So this one is super fun. As always, thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowl Hunter Chronicles Podcast. Got Nate with us today, and this one is going to be right in Nate's wheelhouse. So, actually, I've been trying to get this guy on the podcast for a little while, and it just hasn't lined up with some family stuff and just some things back and forth. But Dante Gramuglia from Flambeau. I met him, I think it went 3 or 4 years ago at the ATA show. He was right across from the Latitude booth, and we were just back and forth. He was back and forth in the saddles and hanging out. And I think if you go into the Latitude shop right now, there's cases and there's decoys and there's all sorts of stuff there from Flambeau, and a lot of that stuff happens where guys like Dante, they don't want to have to carry that stuff home, so it's like, here, you put this in your trailer, I don't got to deal with it. Right. But so every time we go there, we stop in, we say hi to Dante, and he's been going back and forth, how's your season, yada yada yada. And for the last couple of years, he's like, yeah, I've been chasing this big deer, and you get that a lot, especially, guys like Nate. He's like, oh, I've been watching this deer since he was a fawn. I've been counting his spots, and, he's got this and that. And, you take everything with a grain of salt. Everybody's chasing a big deer or whatever. Well, this year, Dante, he says, yeah, I finally, I got a good one behind my house. and he whips out his phone, and it's this giant. I mean, he's like, I finally got that deer I was chasing, and I sent the picture to Nate last night, and Nate, what did you think? And I said, hey, we're going to talk to a guy about a big deer. I need you on this one.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Adam, I don't really get that excited until deer are about 2,000 days old. So once they get to be about 2,000 days, that's when it's like, okay, we're ready. But yeah, Adam, he says big deer, and it's like sometimes you send me something and it's just like this, like I just keep thinking of that one buck that you sent me, the mass buck, and I'm like, what's he going to send me? And talk about a polar opposite deer. Like the deer you just sent, I was like, that right side is like what is that? So yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool seeing that. And yeah, I was like, oh, I'm down for a story about this deer. Like I'm already intrigued. So
what, let's talk a little bit, Dante, about like, I guess we'll start the way that I start with everything, like your hunting history. Like, so how did you get into hunting? Like, what is your hunting style?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I didn't actually come from a hunting or fishing family. I kind of self-taught. The only history of hunting that I have in my family is my mom's worked at Flambeau for 35 years. So she was pregnant with me pulling a gate at Flambeau back in the day. But I knew about the products, but I didn't know anything about the outdoors. So I really cut my teeth on bass fishing when I was younger, local ponds, and kind of fell in love with that. Did a lot of trout fishing up in PA, and started wanting to get into deer hunting because all my friends did it. So where I grew up on, I was lucky enough to have 30 acres that my family owned that I grew up on. So I tried to become a deer hunter, and I remember at the time my oldest brother was trying to get into it as well, and he doesn't hunt at all anymore these days. But so my dad was trying to help him. My dad didn't have much experience, but long story short, my dad would go sit out with me, and that was like he'd smoke a pack of cigarettes and cough the whole time, sitting in a double stand on a foam pole, or a double ladder stand on a foam pole kind of deal. And I always asked him, can I go sit by myself? Can I go sit by myself? So back in the day, he gave me a digital camera, and he said, take this in the woods and you get a photo of a deer, and then I'll let you go sit by yourself with a crossbow. So I did that for a very long time. And I remember taking the photo, showing my dad. I was so excited. I would probably say I was around 13, 14 at that time. And fast forward to past that, I didn't harvest my first deer till I was about 17 years old. Little half rack was my first harvest after many, many, many years of trying. And then after high school, I was into sports. So October, November was full of football and all that stuff. So I didn't really have all that time to hunt. And I went off to college, and I just met a great group of people there when I got onto the Kent State bass fishing team, and I was fishing collegiately. I met these guys that were diehard deer hunter and waterfowl hunters, and I just loved it from there. It grew from there. I started duck hunting. I started chasing bigger deer and learning about actual deer hunting and not just going to sit in the woods. And kind of evolved from there. And when I got out of college, I was looking for somewhere to work, and I had a pretty good part-time job at the time, but I never got to see my wife. I was working evenings. She was working days. So Flambeau actually had a posting, and I went and talked to the gentleman about everything but the job, fishing, hunting, all that. And the next thing I knew, I was part of the team, and then my love for hunting really took off from there. So it was kind of a slow burn, if you will, that grew over the years. But it's kind of, I'm not like most people where I had a grandpa or something that really got me into hunting. I kind of got into it on my own.
So I want to hear more about like your first deer, like that, you said that half rack, like, so going from sitting with your dad to having to go out there with a digital camera and try and like chase down a deer just to get a picture to get to hunt by yourself. Like kind of like take us through that hunt. Cause that's a long like culmination of things to have to happen to get your first deer.
Right.
So what was that like for you? Like what was that hunt? How did that come about?
A lot of misses, a lot of misses. I mean, I seriously remember, back then, I would go back in the woods with a walkie-talkie and I would communicate with my dad and I'd be like, oh, I just shot at one. I just shot one. And I mean, we tracked and trailed so many deer, so much white hair, so many poor learning curves, let's say. But I remember that first one, I'm using my dad's crossbow. It was literally, I think it was a 1970s Horton Thunderbolt. I still have it. It's at my dad's house, my parents' place, but heavy as all get out. The thing weighs 30 pounds, crazy. So, but I remember it was late October, or it was late October, early November, and I remember just blowing on a grunt call like it was a trumpet out there in the woods, and in came this little half rack like 20 yards, and of course I gut shot it, unfortunately. So I got the full experience. I remember my dad hadn't gutted a deer in 10 years at that point, so him and I are out the woods trying to figure this out together, and it was a gut shot, so it was not pretty. So that was my first deer experience, and my second one wasn't much better. I remember I unfortunately spined my second deer, and I remember it just like screaming and like me walking, my dad like, what do I do? And he's like, shoot it again. And that was with a crossbow as well. So it took a couple of years to really learn about deer hunting, and what most people go through. Unfortunately, there's some learning curve there, but yeah.
And for the listener, I mean, I see Nate there, and I'm trying to like think about like his wheels turning, and obviously like I'm cognizant of the listener, and they're thinking like, we hate crossbows and we can't, but in this situation, you're coming from a background of nothing. You're trying to figure this out. I mean, bless your dad for helping you out, or affording you this opportunity, but like the tools that you had were really pretty much limited, and so you're getting out there like the best that you can. And I mean, I guess it gives us like a little bit of insight. Like I'll have just like a hair of concession, because this gives a side of like the crossbow that I don't ever see. We're surrounded by guys who, I can go to the Bowman's Club at any point. I mean, my daughter says crossbows are lazy. She's 10, right?
Yeah.
But we have literally outside of this room, I have 3 compound bows. One of them for her. I have one for her hanging right here. So that's all she's ever known. But for guys just trying to get into it and don't have anybody to teach them, maybe that's just a way to get into the woods without a mentor. And all that other stuff, bad hits and all that stuff. I mean, that whether you're 12 or 30, your first few years of hunting, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, I don't care who you are.
Right. It's an interesting thing, because I feel now, knowing what I know now, and I probably share the similar thoughts that you guys might on crossbows or whatever. But to your point, I don't know if I knew what a compound bow was when I was in high school. I remember, actually, I could tell you the first time I probably learned about a compound bow. My best friend Mason went and bought a Bowtech our senior year of high school, and I remember my first experience with it. He's like, check this thing out. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a hunter, whatever. And the dude's got a wingspan twice my little T-Rex arm. So Andy was left-handed, and I remember like, let me pull that back and shoot it. And I skinned my forearm from elbow to wrist. I mean, just about peeled it off. Because his draw length is, 2 more inches at least than mine. So, but I didn't even know, like, that was just how you got into it. It was actually majority, me out there bow hunting was actually kind of more surprising because I come from an area that's so heavy on the week of gun season. Most people don't even know there is an archery season outside of, that week of gun season up here in Ohio. So, it's a great way to, I'm glad I learned it, that side of things, and got to experience the heartaches in the beginning. Because there was a couple. I mean, there was some really good, knowing what I know now of the property we grew up on. Oh, it gives me there was some really great deer. Trail cameras were like brand new at that time, running off 12 D batteries and SD cards, and I remember getting some awesome deer on trail cameras back then, and not even understanding that they were that awesome.
I think that's pretty cool. Like, and like Adam said, like the crossbow versus compound versus archery. Like, I think we can all think of guys that probably should have started with a crossbow to like help them understand or like shorten the learning curve. Like, I think about me, like by the time I shot my first deer with a compound, the hundreds and thousands of arrows I had shot with a compound bow from like 4 years old on was quite a bit. And you got a guy maybe who, in a situation like you, who doesn't have that like uncle or dad or like this community of guys. Like, I knew I was going to kill a deer with a bow when I was like 2 years old. Like, like that was like, I was raised that way because my dad and uncle were like some of the first guys in their little town to actually deer hunt with a bow. So that was my upbringing. But then, fast forward to now, I've helped a lot of people, maybe getting deer hunting for the first time, adult onset hunters, or guys who sound very similar to you. Like, they're in high school and they just graduated and they want to do something, and you try to get a compound set up for them and do these things. And it's like, you can teach so much, but then when you got an animal in front of you, like sometimes I think it's okay to give a guy a crossbow and say, hey, here, like this is your introduction into this, but then also be very conscious that this isn't where it stops. Like, you can continue this growth, and compound, is different, and kind of help guys like that. I can think of 3 or 4 guys that shot their first deer with a crossbow, and now they're all compound hunters, and if they bust out the crossbow, I'm the first person to give them a bunch of crap if they kill another one, like I will do that too. But yeah, it's a good tool. And it's 1970s crossbow. Like, I can only imagine what that thing looks like and how inefficient it was. I
wish I had it to show it to you. I'll have to send you guys photos of it. It is cool. It's like a all wood stock. It has a big metal bar running across the top with a giant scope on it. It is sweet. But another point is it makes me feel old saying this, and I'm not old, but it was different than it is now. There is a plethora of information you can get at the touch of your fingers now. Back then, like, I was shooting Muzzy, I think it was Muzzy 3 blades or 4 blade fixed broadheads. They definitely were not lined up with my fletching so that it flew right. Like, it was, it just, you didn't know these things that you could find out in 10 seconds now. I remember it was probably late high school that mechanicals were really starting to become a thing. And I remember my cousin had bought, he was trying to become or get into hunting too, and he bought some Rage mechanicals, and they were collars back then, and they were so rough. But I remember playing with those half open when we were shooting them and stuff like that. It was a learning curve. It's crazy though how much it's changed from now to like a kid getting into it these days. The amount of information that there is at their disposal.
It's interesting, and I didn't think this conversation was going to go this way to start. But like, when you talk about that, like even like in like my youth, because I think I'm older than both of you, to like think about like the quote unquote like early crossbows and you talk about like the information, right? Like back in the day, like what are you gonna do? You pick up like Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, freaking Bowhunter magazine, Peterson's. What articles were? I mean, because that's where you're getting your information, right?
Yep.
Or like from
100%.
it, you know, maybe like a TV show or something. But as far as like the technical information, like where are you getting information to like tune your crossbow or like whatever? Like it doesn't. I mean, I think that information maybe exists on YouTube or something. But like to your point, like I'm just thinking of like I remember them saying like, oh, you can't shoot the rages with the crossbow because it'll blow the collars off them. But like I mean, even with my dad, I remember my dad even like to this day, if you ask him, like he wants like a 4-blade 1.5-inch Rocky Mountain that will plane at 25 yards. So you're like 20 yards and in. So if you took that same mentality and put it in front of a crossbow bolt, like, oh my God, it's going to shoot like a hockey stick, like, shoom.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Well, like to the point, it seriously was magazines. I remember Field and Stream asking my mom to get me a subscription to Field and Stream so I can read the magazines. I remember like the first time reading an article about using doe pee and windage and where to set up for the wind going. I'm like, what's all this about wind? Why is this so crucial? Because I used to just walk into the woods and go sit in a tree and hope a deer would come out. I would make sure I'd take a pumpkin out of the garden on the way and throw it out in front of me and hope a deer would come eat the smashed pumpkin. I mean, what do you mean wind? So it was crazy how limited it was to these days. It's a good thing. I hope more people start getting back into it because I feel like hunting's kind of been a dying thing recently. I mean, the number of license sold each year actually proves that it has been going down drastically versus like fishing. But so hopefully the vast amount of knowledge does help kids who do want to get into it and maybe don't have the resources like I was when I was younger, dive on in and actually get into it.
So now fast forward to you get your job at Flambeau, you've gone through college, you've been reignited and probably we'll say educated on you know, I don't want to say like quote unquote like how to hunt or to do it right because you know everybody has their own thing. So then what does your hunting journey look like past that? Like what is your style? Because that was the thing is like I'm sending Nate like information, like what information I have, like small property, like he's like crossbow and I'm like no, not crossbow, and he's like corn pile and I said no, he's bouncing around. so that like ladder stand, like nope. So what was your hunting style?
I'd say my style changed a lot over the past 2 years. So when I was working at the Cleveland Indians is where I worked before Flambeau. I was camera operator for them throughout the World Series stretch and all that. So a lot of time when like from 2016 to 18, let's say, even though I started Flambeau in 17, in the fall, I had a lot of time at the ballpark of peak Lake. Luckily, I mean, that we were playing playoff baseball, that I wasn't able to chase deer as much. So I really got into waterfowl for a long stretch. Was chasing that high, if you will, of waterfowl hunting. And my wife and I got a dog. I spent a lot of time training her, and my goal was just to have a retriever that I fully trained, and like I accomplished all that. And a lot of time my deer hunting was always a second thought. It wasn't my main priority. So I wouldn't put much time into it. I would hunt like my wife's grandparents have 20 acres that they let me hunt, but it's gotten a lot harder to hunt over the years just because of neighboring properties, building houses and stuff like that. Just honestly, my deer hunting would be what was accessible to me with the most amount of ease as possible. Going into these past 2 seasons, Well, last year I couldn't really hunt, and we'll get into why. Because the past 2 years, I really was unable to hunt, and it's part of this deer story that we'll get into. But this year, my style was different than any other year, and I really credit it to, honestly, I going down the YouTube rabbit hole of just watching all these guys who are doing a lot of door knocking and stuff like that, and just changing their style. Um, so I wanted to be 100% mobile this year. I didn't want to go sit in the same stand the same 12 times like I've fallen myself doing many years before. So like my goal was, I always fall back on hunting my wife's grandparents' property. I was like, I don't even want to touch that this year. I don't want to go in there. It hasn't worked out. My past history is actually not helping me. And I remember sitting on a couch having conversation with my buddy saying, man, I just want to accomplish something this year. I have some really good deer on trail camera. I want to do things different and like accomplish a goal. Like I'm not going to shoot the first 130 plus that walks in front of me. I'm going to try to target a deer this year. Something that I've really struggled with in past years. I would try to, oh, here's my target buck and never get anywhere close to it. But so mobile was my style this year. Would be not saddle yet. That's my goal next year, but mobile setup with a platform. And what I did was I got on the list of, so I'm up in northern Ohio, so it is really hard to door knock where I am at. There is a lot of people leasing a lot of good land around here. The Amish have a lot of permission on a majority of the properties, so it's very hard to knock on a door and get someone to say yes. So we do have some public, there's thousands of acres up here. And I was spending a lot of time this year on that property. It was roughly 2,000 acres of, it was scattered a couple miles apart. I was doing a lot of scouting on that property and just trying to figure things out heading into the season. And I found a deer that I would put, it was just slightly smaller than the one we're going to talk about. And that was actually the deer I was putting 90% of my efforts into this year. I mean, my wife was ready to kill me because I was kayaking a mile and a half upstream trying to get to the where this deer was living, and like there was no way to access it from the road. River was the only way I can go in, and it was during mid-October when we were getting quite a bit of rain. River was raising, flowing really fast, to the point where I couldn't even take a regular kayak in there and paddle. I had to use my fishing pedal kayak to pedal into there to keep up with the current. So this year was historically, I was a go sit in the tree stand that's been there forever and just hope something walks in front of me. This year, I kind of took more of what it sounds like the Nate approach and tried to dissect, learn, figure out what these deer actually, how they're moving. And even after all that, I had a little bit of luck on my side, and is actually how I ended up harvesting this deer. But yeah, this year was very different for me. It was actually very exciting.
So a couple things quickly before Adam jumps in here, because I know he's got the old brain is just going. But when you talked about like this year being the year, like you kind of wanted to flip the switch and, you know, hunt differently. One of the things you talked about was scouting. And I think for me, like I can relate to like that moment in time where I was like, you know what, I'd shoot deer, or I would, you know, consistently see deer, and I would, you know, get opportunities. And it was like, I want to, you know, go that next age class of deer, or whatever at the time it was for me. What did I have to do? And I went through like a 5-year dry spell, like with my bow. Like I would see a lot of deer, but I was just like, I knew there was bigger ones, and I'm trying to find them. And I was like, I don't know, I was probably like 23, 22 when I was doing that. But scouting was the thing I had to learn. Like that was not something I was ever shown or done, because I always hunted private land with my family. We had, you know, dairy country, so a lot of ag, and like we saw 100 deer was like no big deal to see 100 deer on your way to go hunting in the evening, or in the morning passing them with vehicles, and you'd see 20 does and 5 little bucks. Like that was pretty common. So like there was no really like scouting was never a thing. So like I learned how to scout in that stretch, and that was on private land still. I was actually scouting public land at the time. Like that's when I was like, I'm doing this, and I watched a lot of videos like that were kind of out at the time, like learning that. And that's how, make fun of me if you want, but like, look at this track. Like this track is different than the other ones. And like, look at that rub, or look at this scrape. What makes it, So for you, like when you started scouting, did you relate some of that scouting, or were you excited for it because you had done quite a bit of scouting for like the waterfowl thing? Because I know some serious duck guys, they do a lot of scouting and they enjoy that process. So did you kind of like have a background of that, and you kind of brought that into the whitetail side of things?
That's a good question. No, I would credit my I have my fishing partner, my good buddy Alec. He spends more time scouting than deer hunting, and it works out. And I'm always like, man, you just get your ass in a tree stand. And he's like, I got to go walk, and he takes his orange vest and a 22 and acts like he's squirrel hunting, but he's actually out there, deer hunting, or I'm sorry, scouting for deer. But no, it's different, the waterfowl versus the deer, scouting wise. You're looking waterfowl, it's kind of macro. You're looking for big, you're driving around, you're just putting the miles on vehicles and looking basically what you can see through binos and all that. Deer, it's so micro, and I'm still learning this side of things. But like he actually, Alec gave me a tip that really helped me getting closer to the deer that I was chasing. I had never used e-scouting correctly, or to the level that is available to us now with LiDAR and leaf off imagery.
Mm-hmm.
I sent him this chunk of public that I was trying to dissect, and he sent it back to me with all these circles. And I'm like, how did you get that? Just like, help me understand, how did you get that just from looking at the app? Because and he's like, well, these trees held the leaves the longest, so they're going to drop the most fruitful amount of acorns, and is probably going to be late season where you want to focus on your deer and this and that. And so he actually helped me quite a bit this year on my scouting. I have a lot to learn on the scouting part of things, but I honestly fully focused on trying to go out and find active scrapes this year, and try to figure out how to play the topography that I was hunting, because where I was chasing that original deer this year it's super hilly. Like I've never hunted anything like that. It's almost like I was hunting up in Tynesta, PA, and it's right here in Ohio, because there's some key rivers that run through all that public property I was talking about. And then on top of that, I'd honestly say the things you don't learn when you're scouting can even be the most helpful part of it. Like, man, I went through and just marked where heavy pressure was, and where people were accessing and how to change it. Like I got close to, I drew back twice before I shot my deer this year, and gosh, I'm glad those 2 deer didn't work out, because one was like a 140 and one was like 145, and the deer we're going to talk about is just spectacular on all being. But yeah, I ended up, through my scouting, I figured where the pressure was coming from on this public, and that's why I ended up accessing it via the river, because it was really the only way to get to the deer without pressuring them, because they were all being pushed to a certain area because of all the pressure. So that's kind of what I learned about scouting this year, is kind of e-scouting, how valuable it can be. And honestly, I always thought, well, I'm doing more harm scouting than I am I just go sit in a tree stand and hope you get lucky. I totally disagree with that now. Scouting if you're just sitting in a tree stand and hope, you're not hunting, you're hoping. If you go out and scout, you're actually, and find the fresh sign, that's how you become a better hunter.
So I got two more parallels that I'm just thinking. I thought maybe it was a waterfowl thing, but you talked about being a big bass fisher. And I've talked to a lot of guys that love bass fishing and tournaments especially. Like they talk about finding the big bass is similar to finding like a big buck.
Yes.
Is that a parallel for you at all that you were able to kind of like use? Or because for me, I just feel like your learning curve was really short. You're talking about stuff because there's obvious like a passion, but you also knew that there would be a benefit to it. So that's why I was kind of curious on that. And then that mindset of scouting and learning this public piece, did you use that information with being mobile and scouting, looked at your private stuff from a different eye, I guess, after doing that? Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, the bass side of things would actually correlate more to the hunting, the deer hunting, absolutely. Because you are looking at more of a micro thing, and bass are pattern related. They do things based off weather. They're usually sitting tight to structure, just like a deer in thicket or whatever. But your other question, absolutely. The scouting I did and chasing that other deer 100% led to me finally being able to harvest the deer on my own personal property that I've been chasing for 3 years. Main reason was access. I can't express to anyone who listens to this, if they want to take one thing away, access is key. The way you access where you're going to hunt, you set the standard for your whole hunt the minute you walk into those woods. And there's the story about this buck. When we get into it, that's what ended up actually being able to harvest the deer was access. And that I just learned from seeing how these deer react to the public pressure. Like you could see, early season when I was scouting out there, half the time I was one of the only trucks in the pull-offs doing that scouting, and the deer activity would show that off, from cameras to signage, all that. Come rut, when most people are getting into the woods, those deer's patterns changed drastically. They went deeper into the woods. It's because they were moving all because of pressure. People were pushing them deeper in. That's why accessing it from the river would have been key to me killing that deer, because they were being pushed a mile back into these woods, and using the wind to their advantage because of all the pressure that was coming from the surrounding area. So, but yes, 100%. What I learned scouting this year on different public land, 100% led to me being able to harvest this deer on my personal property.
All right, Adam, what do you feel about some of that stuff?
Well, I mean,
think you can relate. You can relate really well to a lot of that because you're a public land hunter.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of things. Like so one, like personally, I mean, I'm cringing. I'm hurting because I know Dante hasn't been on a whole lot of podcasts, but like right now, I know, like, as we're listening to this, whoever's listening, like, I'm thinking, like, I have to ask Dante if he wants me to edit this out, because I can go find this deer that you're talking about just from what you've given on this podcast. I can find it.
No, you couldn't. I mean, we're talking thousands of acres.
So what you're saying about your buddy, how fast can he find these trees? Like Nate and I.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
So where we killed does this year, Nate and I, having no history of this spot at all ever in our lifetime, had a pin exactly in the same spot.
Yeah.
Exactly in the same spot. So I mean,
we'll edit that out. But the other stuff he said was great.
But so I'm just like,
lesson learned.
Like my heart is like, I mean, I know Ohio tags like just double this year, but like, is it worth it? How far of a drive is it for me? Like, I mean, I'm telling you.
That
I
was
know,
my next
but I know.
question.
But
Don't say the name.
yeah.
So I'll
But-
go through this and I'll take a look at it.
And Adam's thinking, man, two 140s, like that's for me. Like
Yeah.
I'll go smack one of those. Like that's kind of
Yeah,
like
and
us Michigan
I was
boys.
also thinking like when Nate says like little bucks, I'm like little bucks, like the ones behind me, like these little ones, 5 little bucks, like whatever. No, but like so like to me, like that's the key, right? Is like everything like your buddy was like telling you, and like that is like how quick that learning curve can and just get you on the deer. And then the same thing is like you said something that I say all the time and I tell people, and like it could just be like my mantra is that, if you're not hunting, you're hoping. And like if you're just sitting there and you're just hoping, and if you're not moving, if you're not adjusting, that you're hoping. But one thing that I heard like on a different podcast, and I wanted to bring it up, and I think it may have been it was actually Johnny Stewart that said it, but it 100% applies here. Is you had said that your wife thought you were crazy and you were going this like extra mile, right? So what, I don't know, like possessed you, but like what was your motivation? Because it's very easy to not do that, especially if you're not getting like quote unquote like results, right? So
Yeah.
like if you're not killing, and like you either have to like really love the art of the game of like scouting or getting these trail cam pictures or like trying to figure it out. Because I just think about like, for many of the people in my circle, that's what we love. That's easy. Right. It's not a big deal. But for someone like that's kind of like now just getting into the public land, now that's just, coming from a background of like, oh, well, I'm just going to do these 12 sits a year. Oh, I have this easy piece of private land that I just go sit on. Like, what is that motivation not only to go try it, but to go that like extra mile to do the things that like are very hard? Like what you're outlining is not just like going and hunting public land. That's what you're outlining is like the next level of that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if this year it was because I'm a new father. I don't know if that plays a role in it.
Wanted to get out of the house.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, I don't know if I was. Well, it sounds silly, but I remember growing up, and like I said, I grew up around a lot of hunting families, and I always remember like walking into my buddy's parents' house, and like his dad. There's one buddy in general whose dad had a actual like record book buck on the wall. I remember just walking in and looking at that thing, and just as a young kid, just saying, man, this guy is the coolest guy I've ever met. Look at that deer. So I don't know if me having my son really motivated me and pushed me to achieve a lifelong goal of mine. I have always dreamed of shooting a big deer. The deer before the one I shot this year, I have a couple on the wall, but one, probably 2 in the 140s. And then other than that, some 120 and all that, which are awesome deer. But I always had this dream of just what you see on TV, what you read in magazines, all that stuff. So this year I saw the potential in specifically the 2 deer that I was chasing, and it just really motivated me to finally, if this was the year to do it. So it was honestly probably just internal pride and things. I always made excuses of why I wasn't the one shooting the big deer. And this year I kind of just threw that out and said, I am going to focus. I mean, my black lab is really mad at me. We went duck hunting once this year. So I micro focused on deer hunting. I pushed all that other stuff out, and that was my goal this year. So I was just reallocating my time and the little that I did have with a 6 month at home, and chasing, and to focus merely on deer hunting.
And again, from like a layman or from like a novice or whatever, because I think in your mind you would say that you're not a big buck hunter. This isn't like you would say you're more passionate about fishing and waterfowl than you are about deer hunting. As far as like on that level, what gave you the confidence to say that you could do it or that this was the year that you were going to do it?
Well, deer hunting is like at heart my true passion because it's what got me into it. I don't know. I don't know what gave me the confidence. I just honestly, I've always been a person who believes if you work hard, you could kind of accomplish it. And I know that doesn't relate in the deer hunting world, but someone who chases big deer, there's a million different reasons not to get off the couch. So it's just getting past that level and just getting out there, but also learning when to not go hunting. And that's a big thing. And it's hard when you work 5 days a week and only have 2 days off. It's hard when, I only have Saturday and Sunday to hunt usually. But it was kind of that mix of finding when to not go hunt and when to hunt. Yeah.
I mean, I can relate maybe a little bit. Obviously, I didn't have the success in year one like you have with the switch. But I remember, my season would end or something, and it was like I knew that I was, and you seem to be this kind of a guy too, like talking about working hard and doing all these things. And you want to be successful. I mean, you talked about a goal of raising your dog and doing that stuff yourself and having it be a successful, dog at the end of it. I've failed miserably on that end with dogs too. I've had some great dogs and I have one currently that is, but knowing that you need to, like, you could look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, did I give this hunting thing what I should give or what I have the potential to give? And it seems like you kind of had that moment. You're like, I'm going hard this year. Like I'm going to do these things. And you had the free time you had probably at 2 a.m. with little baby. You're like, I can't sleep anyways. Might as well have a YouTube video rolling here and trying to just absorb as much information. And that, when you start having that mindset, like towards the whitetail, that's what I can relate to. Like some of my best years are because my free time is used, doing that kind of stuff, like watching some guy I feel like I can relate to on YouTube or putting a podcast on. I mean, stuff that happens outside of the normal work hours, normal day hours is done sometimes pretty late at night.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That did play a big role into it. And honestly, I guess the biggest motivation was the deer we're going to talk about. Like I said, 3 years of history with them. This year, I didn't even know he existed yet. I didn't even when I was already getting motivated and planning to go after him. But I knew as of late last season that he was still alive and made it through the 2024 deer hunting season.
Okay.
So
how big was he 3 years ago?
Well, that's what I want to. That's what I want to get into. Like right now is like to shift focus because one of the things that you had said, and I want to get into, like your history and the property, because one of the things that you said was the motivation to get off of the couch, and this is something that Nate can totally is relate to, I guess. And it's one thing that I'm like kind of like learning about, I guess, because having like this year was the first year that I had like some private ground that was real close to my house. But that getting off the couch, right? So you're going a mile back in raging rapids to this land that anybody can hunt. It's really easy to find. Just listen closely. But leaving deer to find deer, right? So this deer is literally on your doorstep and you're killing yourself to go find other deer. But I want to get into the history and all of that. So let's talk about the property that you have, and I'll let Nate kind of take it from here because he's the land man, we'll say.
Yeah. Well,
So,
now
yeah,
now you're in my head. I don't know how I'm going to talk about this without people knowing where my property is.
just I'll give you an outline here. Like
Yeah.
when I ask you how big it is, just say sub this many, and you can round up or round down. Like we just want to know size of property. I want to know 3 years ago when you said the history starts, like what you think size of the deer was. Like, you know what I mean? We'll kind of just be a basic approach, because I want to. I'm back figuring this because I saw the picture of you with success, and I'm like, okay, how big was this deer the last couple of years, and why did it take 2 years of trail cam pictures to fire you up, kind of a thing. But so 3 years ago, the first year of history, like, is this a sub 40 acre piece? Is this a sub 20 acre piece? Like, where did this history start with this deer?
Yeah. Okay. So, the parcel it was shot on is sub 10 acres. So it is very small, very small. But it really started with this. This is the great. There's so many twists and turns in the story of this deer, and that's why this deer is a deer of a lifetime. And it's not because of its size; it's because of the personal relationship I have with it and the history of it. And like me, even talking about it won't even portray to these listeners how much this deer meant to me. But because of what I had gone through in my personal life while this deer was living right in my backyard, basically. But yeah, so it all started with a chicken coop. So my wife and I bought our house in 2023, and we moved in, and I never had any interest in deer hunting. I was chasing the big hundreds of acres. I always thought you got to have big pieces of property, shoot big deer, chasing that dream. And I remember literally like having a conversation when we bought the place. When we were house searching, I wanted 10 acres, I wanted 20 acres, and we just couldn't, swing it with what we were looking for and what best fit our family house wise. So, we didn't settle. Like, I love where I live, but I remember talking to her. I was like, yeah, there's deer hunting's not going to be great back there. And so it was in 2023, and in mid-October, something was killing our chickens. I had recently moved the chicken coop over to the wood line and built an outside run and built it up real nice. And I couldn't understand what was getting in there. So I took one of my trail cameras and I threw it on the corner of the chicken coop. And I have the photo I can send you guys to show it, but in the background, I get this picture of this deer walking to get a drink of water in the background, and it was him. And I would say in 2023, he was probably 130s, maybe 140. He sparked my interest into hunting the property. That deer sparked the interest into hunting this property. So it wasn't necessarily, we talked about what motivated me this year. It did. That deer motivated me in 2023. Just some things happened that wouldn't allow me to fully chase it. So
that picture, I'm going to interject because I see what he looked like the year this year you killed him. Did he have that frame?
He did not.
You say, okay.
No, we'll get into that in 24. Something must have happened.
Because if he had a characteristics of that frame, like we're talking, like even if he was only 140, he probably looked way bigger.
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
What I was
okay. I mean, he didn't have any trash or anything like that. He was honestly a very typical deer you would see, a mid-sized good deer running around here.
Okay.
But that deer, just the antlers, it could have been, he could have been a 100-inch deer. It was just seeing him in the background that said, man, maybe I got something here that I don't fully understand. So, in 2023, the steps I took to try to harvest that deer was, yes, we do bait in Ohio. So I started I put a feeder in my backyard to see. And I have strong opinions. I wish Ohio would get rid of it, but unfortunately, in like where I live, if I don't do it, it's almost like I'm not in the game. But I do want to say I did not, I was nowhere near the corn when I harvested this deer. It did not play a role. Actually, we'll get into that in 2025, this season, because he was the smartest deer I've ever chased.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I can say that I don't like baiting. I've hunted over bait in the past when it used to be legal in Michigan. I killed deer on bait. My first few deer with the bow was not over bait, but if I had a 5 acre-ish, 7, 10, whatever number it was, and it was legal in Michigan, I can promise you there'd be a corn feeder out in my backyard.
yeah.
That's just one of those things I think that, I don't know how I would handle, like, if it'd be one of those things where it's like, oh, is there a doe out there or something, and then you kind of be fun, like, a thing, but it's a hard thing to realize, because some of my fondest hunts as a little kid were over apples and corn,
right.
right? So I don't know. It's kind of, I don't blame a guy, but I know that there's been rumors here in our state that baiting could come back on private property. And I am already like, okay, if that happens, I got to do this, and this to prepare for it. And
Right.
yeah, it's a fun thing. So 23, you saw a deer. Holy cow, I can actually hunt in my backyard. Didn't even think this was a thing to do. And okay. So that's where we're at. So 23 season, how'd that go?
So 23 season, I put out a couple trail cameras. I do have permission to the property next to where mine as well. So that did expand my area. Started putting cameras out around there, and I was absolutely baffled by what I was seeing. The deer we were talking about was not the biggest one in the woods. So fast forward to 2023, how'd that season go? Very poorly. My wife and I were expecting at the time, and unfortunately in mid-November that year, we lost our son over halfway through the pregnancy due to a rare genetic malformation in the womb. So it was literally Thanksgiving. My wife and I were sitting in the hospital, and I'm just getting daylight photos nonstop, right back there. And we came home from the hospital, and shotgun season starts the Monday after Thanksgiving. So we had planned when we got out of the hospital and my wife was resting that I was going to sneak out for a little bit. Well, of course, I got sick as a dog. I'm guessing I got COVID or whatever from being at the hospital. I remember laying there in bed with like 103-degree fever, and opening day of shotgun, there was the deer that standing at my feeder at 9:30 a.m. and I was laying in bed sick. So luckily everything happens for a reason, because if I was in the woods that day, we wouldn't be having this podcast talking about what he is or what he was. So 2023, that was basically the cliff notes on that. In the 2023 off season, I did a lot of work to my property. So the guy that owned it before me thought he was going to be a cattle farmer, and he literally turned every inch of yard into a cattle pasture. So like it was rough. So I did a lot of maintaining and turning it back into a yard of some sorts, and cleaning it up a little bit heading into the 2024 season.
So were you able to do like habitat stuff? Like, did you add a food plot, or did you hinge cut, or is it more of this place is a disaster, I need to like take a baby step here and kind of like start here?
I went to, my idea was to put in some food plots back there, but and he already went through the previous owner. It was like he had a few too many bush pops and with a chainsaw and went and like dropped all these trees. And knowing I probably should not have touched it, but I really wanted to put in these food plots, so I went and cleaned it up. And then it gets way too wet back there that growing anything just isn't a possibility till we get some drainage back there. But so no, I didn't really do the improvements. I kind of just left it as is, and I didn't go overboard is the good thing. Like I didn't do too many changes to change the core area. So I just cleaned it up a little bit.
That's a great thing you just said there, because I have seen it with people, or like, hey, we're gonna take a huge swing at this, and I had a really big deer that I hunted the one year, and I don't think I went too hard. I may have hunted a little too much or spent more time there than I should have during season, but I remember just going to the next year like, oh, he's here. I'm gonna try to do the same thing I did last year when he was there, and I was unable to. And I think that deer was just so finicky that he didn't have what he had the year before, and he moved off, and the neighbor shot him. But but yeah, don't go. Sometimes you can go too hard on small properties, and I think a lot of guys talk about that are invested in the land stuff. So starting 24, like summer, you started getting pictures of them, or what? How'd that kind of go for you?
Nope. So my area, it is not a summertime range for anything. It's like barren land out there. I don't know. It doesn't hold the deer that time of the year. So I really don't know until like heading into October what's out there. September's usually pretty slow, but what I did do in 2024, I had this awesome idea, and I was really excited. I cut a hole in my chicken coop and put in a window that you can fold down with nice felt seals and all this stuff, and put a little chair in there and a little hook to hang my bow on. And I was going to spend some quality time with my roosters chilling in the chicken coop was my plan going into 2024.
Oh, what a cover set.
That was my plan. So, and honestly, I'll tell you, that plan was based around hunting over bait, 2024's plan.
Yeah.
So heading into 2024, when he starts showing up on camera, he is a regular, like clockwork every single day, right after dark. And then heading into like mid-October, he started to change a little bit towards coming out during shooting light. Well, unfortunately,
checking on the does that I'm assuming are there,
Yep.
right? Like he's checking
Yep.
on does. Yep.
So absolutely. So unfortunately, in 2024, my dad passed away suddenly in late July. So like there was just a lot of things with helping my mom, and with it being sudden, still is, that we were going through and trying to figure out that I mentally wasn't in it in 2024. When I went and sat in the chicken coop, it was just to get away for a little bit. It really just never came to full fruition in 2024. And I would be over at my mom's blowing her leaves for her when I would be in the tree stand. So wouldn't change it for the world. That's what we're here for. Family always takes first. But 2024 season kind of revolved around that. He was watching him. He actually daylighted I'm trying to think. 2024, he probably daylighted two or three times that I remember in October. And then after that, he kind of went missing. So I went out. I said, all right, I'm going to go out for opening of rifle, shotgun, and I'm just going to go sit back there. And I took a climber and put it in a tree I never sat in before. And when it was December 2nd of 2024, and I went back in there, and I wasn't in it mentally. I was at a pretty low point. I got up in the stand. It's blizzarding sideways. I mean, and I'm looking at my house with nice wood burner smoke rolling out of the chimney, and I'm freezing. I'm like, man, what am I doing? I should go inside. And this little buck came through and pushed a doe right under my tree stand. They circled around me, literally went up over into the yard, came back through, and went back into the big block of woods. And I was sitting there. I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. I'm gonna sit 20 more minutes and go back into the house. So I am literally frozen, and I look to my left, and here comes that doe again. And I'm like, oh, that buck must be bumping her right through there. And then I look right behind that buck, and there's I haven't officially scored him yet, but he was a nice 10 point. I would put him, he's definitely over mid 130s. Let's say, I don't know, haven't scored him, but he walked out, and I shot him, and he with a rifle, and he teetered over. So that was my 2024 season. I will tell you what, that deer, it was so cool because I was at such a low point.
Yep.
That I put the least amount of effort I've ever put into a deer season in 2024 just because of the situation. And it's like that deer was meant to be. It's like my dad sent me a little gift to raise my spirits a little bit. So, but there was, back to the deer that we're talking about, he ended up showing up literally right after that. I remember I did have a photo of him going into rifle season right before that. And then I didn't see him. And then all of a sudden, like December, like the week of rifle season, he shows up and he dropped his right side. So you asked about, we talked about that right side and all that. Something happened. I don't know if he busted it off fighting, rubbing. I don't know if he got clipped by a car. I don't know, but something showed up. And so throughout 2020, the remainder of 2024 season into early 2025, he was pretty skinny. It was like he was hurt to some extent, but he obviously, my tags were filled. There was no pressure on my end, and he just kept coming back to the feeder until he dropped both sides. In 2024, I would put him. No, oh God, I would cautiously put him just north of 160.
Oh, so he did a really big jump from 23 to 24.
He put on a huge frame.
Yeah.
A very, very big frame.
Which happens. I mean, I would assume he was probably like a 3-year-old and 23 and then jumped to the 4. And they talk about bucks making that jump, and I've seen it. But, not to glance over the other stuff you talked about. I mean, the struggles or the challenges you and your family went throughout those couple years. I mean, I think a lot of guys can relate to what gets them off the couch, right? And I think what you went through that year got you off the couch and able to, go in inclement weather and, we're able to punch a tag. And that means, I can only imagine what that tag meant to you, more so than a lot of other things that go through. And I think that's why a lot of us have such a passion for the outdoors and doing things like that, because that does help, mentally or whatever you want to say, get you in that position. So
it did. And I'm not to interrupt, but to build off that, that deer, last year's deer meant so much to me just because of that. And it's weird. It's like, I don't claim to be a big buck killer by any means, but every big buck I've killed, has such a unique story to it that is so unique to me that it's almost like, I don't know, like it was meant to be to some extent. Like my biggest deer on the wall before I shot this year's, quick backstory behind that. I shot it, in 2018, 2019. And, long story short, our director of sales at Flambeau at the time was an older gentleman that moved up to Northern Ohio. One of the greatest guys I've ever had the pleasure to meet. His family's awesome. Southern guy. He worked for Cabela's for years. He's well known in the industry, his family and all that. And he had bought this house with like 40 acres, and he bought the property so his grandkids could come up and hunt. And they didn't visit all that often. So one day he was walking in the office and he had an old Southern whistle when he spoke. And he said, he came over to my office and said, "Dante, you got anywhere to hunt this season?" I said, "No, not really." He's like, "Why don't you come hunt my 40 acres? And I'm like, "Oh man, this is awesome." So I was putting in a lot of work, and I would go over there and spent a lot of time with, his name was Kim Norton, and hanging out with him. And so fast forward to right before rifle season, his wife sent him an email of a buck standing in their backyard, a photo of it. And he forwarded it to me, and I responded and said, "I'll see him in my scope this weekend." And I did. I shot that deer that weekend. tracked it with Kim. I remember standing up in the stand and he was walking to where the deer was last standing, and I'm trying to direct him, and he was deaf as all get out because one time his wife shot a turkey off his back, and it blew out his eardrum. So like the guy lived 4 lives, but unfortunately Kim ended up passing in a hunting accident a couple years later. So that deer, where I was getting at, that deer means so much because of that. So it's kind of weird. These deer, I have such fond memories with them and such great experience and history with the deers that I have been lucky enough to harvest, that it's quite unique.
What's interesting about that, and I know that you're saying that these are like your biggest deer and all that, and this is one thing that, like I said, why it's great that Nate and I are like so polar opposite. But to me, it's always the story that is more important than the deer. And I say that every time that you don't shoot a deer, you're robbing somebody else of that story. So like if a smaller deer had come by and you didn't shoot it, you would have no story of tracking that deer with Kim and all of that in that last memory. And you know, that's just me, and you know, that's probably selfish, like on my part. But that to me is like what it's all about, is like sharing those experiences and everything. So I don't know, like for me, I always think about those memories, like that drag out, that high five, that put,
100%.
you know, directing somebody from the stand. Those things to me are better than, you know, because especially with the deer that I shoot, right? Nobody's going to remember that 4-point or 6-point or whatever, but they're going to remember the terrible drag out or the beers on the tailgate. They're going to remember those things way more than the inches or whatever.
And it goes even like when Kim passed, I was actually using one of his rifles, his lever actions, he bought 2 of the exact same ones for his grandkids, and that's what I used to shoot that deer. And his wife gifted it to me when he passed, and that gun is like my prized possession, to the point where that was the dad story I was talking about, where I was in the stand in the freezing. That was the gun I shot that deer with. It's like my little luck, my good luck charm. But you are 100% correct. I'm not a inches kind of guy. Like this deer I shot this year, the number's cool, but it doesn't mean more to me than what the stories mean. So.
Okay. All right. So after that, you know, hearing that story about all your deer and last couple bucks you killed, and it kind of puts some of the puzzle pieces together why you went hard in the paint in 2025 and wanted to, you know, do this public land thing or find other deer, because that deer, even though you had some crazy history with them and kind of saw him grow, wasn't a regular, was kind of in and out, wasn't really like you had a lot of opportunities at him. So you're like, I need to give myself some more opportunities, and went to the public land route. So from hearing you earlier, you talked about, you know, hunting in October and doing these things, and you're kind of weekend warrioring it, got a, you know, little kid at home. Where was the transition, or what kind of led you to be like, yeah, I need to put some effort to try to kill the deer you ended up getting?
Yeah. So 2025 season. So it actually started, his summer range was nowhere near where he was harvested at. It was on a across the street on a much larger chunk of property. And the first time I saw him, it was my wife and I were coming home it was the first time we had gone out to eat with our newborn. So he was probably 3 months old. We went out to grab dinner just at a local place, and we're driving home, and it was dark. and we're driving past that or it's not even neighboring, but we're driving past where I think he's summer ranges, but I really don't know. And I just see this shadow in my high beams going down the road. So I do the whole kind of swerve a little bit to get a better look, and he was, no kidding, 10 yards off the ditch line eating some clover. And my wife looks at me and goes, "Oh my gosh, I think that's the biggest deer I've ever seen." And I literally, he runs off, and I'm like, he's alive. Like, I was so pumped. So that was the spark that lit the flame. So after that, he was probably still in velvet. I'm trying to remember it's when you have a newborn and very little sleep, it kind of all blends together. But it was before season, so it was probably August or so. I remember at the time I had a really good turkey season this year. I had a goal. It's kind of where my psychoticness started this year, was with turkeys. I had a goal of shooting a state grand slam. I wanted to shoot 4 birds in 4 different states. I ended up accomplishing 3 out of the 4. Michigan, up in the UP, Oklahoma, Ohio, and then I fell short on the PA side of things. My bird got hung up at 100 yards the last day of the season. But so I ended up buying a little fleshing wheel, and why I bring this up, to do all my turkey fans, make things a little bit easier. One of a family friend's son shot his first bird this year, and I offered to mount it up for him and put it on a plaque. So I had finished it up, and it was literally this Saturday after I had saw that deer in that field eating the clover, and he pulled in the driveway, and I went to go hand it to him for his son, and he goes, "Man, I hear there's a big deer running around these parts." And I looked at him. I was like, "I haven't even gotten a photo of him. What are you talking about?" And of course, a friend of a friend that he works with got a photo of the thing, and he showed me the photo, and sure enough, so I was like, "Oh boy, I guess there's more pressure or more eyes on this than I thought." So I still hadn't gotten a photo. Like, I was like, "Man, I haven't even gotten a photo of this deer yet." So then it was October 3rd. I remember it well, because they were brush hogging all day. I could hear them brush hogging where I thought that deer was where its summer housing, or where its summer pattern was. And I remember telling Summer, my wife, that I bet he changes over. I bet I get a picture of him here in the next couple weeks. It was that night that I got the first picture. He came back. The scrape that I ended up shooting him near, he came back to his community scrape from the year before on the evening of October 3rd. So from October 3rd on, so October 3rd, at this point, I have proof of life. I hadn't seen him on my property. He shows back up on my property. So I'm really trying to come up with a plan. I'm talking to my buddy as October's going on. He is regular, but he is 5 a.m., like clockwork, 5 a.m., always heading the same direction. I ended up, I got a hold of my buddies over at Moultrie. I got a bunch more cameras. I put so many cameras on this little chunk of woods that you would think it's insane. But still, at the end of the day, he would only walk past 2 cameras. I couldn't figure out how he was coming in, coming out. He would only walk past 2, and he was going to a scrape, and that was it. He wouldn't go to his scrape, and his where I was feeding near the chicken coop is a good distance away. He wouldn't go anywhere near food. Never. In 2025, I never got a picture of him anywhere near food. So mid-October or late October, he became less frequent, and then he fell off the face of Earth heading into November.
So how big was he in your brain, that first trail cam picture you got?
I thought I was excited. I thought he was a 200-inch deer. I did.
The frame is just
okay.
Yeah, you're like, holy cow!
The first photo I got, he was still like, he wasn't full, his body wasn't big, so his antlers compared to his body like was insane when he was hitting that scrape. Like it's the biggest deer by far I've ever had on camera. Like my heart sank, or not sank, I was just in complete awe. So I thought I was chasing a true 200 inch. So I was talking to my buddy and I was like, all right, so this is why we talked about motivation. I was going to, this year, it was all or nothing. So I was going to I had 2 deer on the list, and if it wasn't those 2 deer, I wasn't going to pull back. There was actually a moment where I was out scouting on public, and I'm not kidding, a 3rd deer ran straight up to me, bumping a doe. I'm not kidding, 10 yards from me. In the pouring rain, I was out walking, and I luckily took my compound with me. And I saw the doe coming, and I hid behind a tree, and she ran up to my tree, and I drew back, and this buck came over the hill that was not north of 180, was definitely, but still awesome deer. And if he would have came to the right side of the tree, I would have shot that deer, but he went to the left, and thankfully he did. So, so I was going to chase, going back to what I was saying about our late October.
Yeah.
So I was, that's what it was. I was talking to my buddy, and I'm like, man, I don't know what I can do to harvest this deer. I cannot access it. I cannot access to where I need to be without blowing any which direction in which I think he's living. So there is a key piece of property around that is very overgrown. It is not, once again, we're talking sub 20 acres, but sweet old lady, got a good rapport for her. She's not a fan of hunters. And I don't know if she knows if I hunt. It's fine. But that was his home range, and I assumed that was his home range. So I thought that I was getting him going back to his bed because it was 5 a.m. every day. So the last few photos I had of him, he switched. He was at like 10 p.m. And then all of a sudden, I didn't get pictures of him forever. He disappeared, changed his pattern, and disappeared. So I was chasing those other dreams on public land, working my butt off. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's a key part. This is what ended up to being the deer's demise. I tried to expand my area by talking to my neighbors, and I just couldn't. Either someone was already hunting the property or they weren't a fan of hunting. I tried to door knock as much as I could, and I just couldn't. But the property that I butt up to, the gentleman does hunt, but he only hunts like shotgun occasionally. I think he has 1 camera out or whatever. I had a good rapport with him, and I went over there one day and talked to him and said, hey, do you mind if I just park at your horse barn and I walk through your property to get to mine? I won't hunt your property, but can I use it as access? And like, we're talking probably only, under 200 yards of a walk from there. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, that's fine. He's like, you chase anything big back there? And I said, well, yeah, there's something good back there. He's like, yeah, there's a huge buck rocking around back there. I was like, yeah, you got any photos of it? And he pulls out a phone and shows me a 140-inch deer running around back there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, I actually was honest with him. I won't lie. I talked too much, but I looked at him and I showed him a picture of actually the deer that I was chasing, because he knew about it from the year before. And also he's a nice guy. He's my neighbor. He's letting me access his property. I want to be honest and true with him. And he's like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And he mentioned that his son might be coming home from the Navy. And he's like, oh, maybe my son will get a shot at it, So that access is the only reason. If I would have walked through the woods to get to him regularly without that access, I would have never shot that deer. So that was the one big thing, because I was talking to my best friend. We were watching hunting videos early season, and I hadn't showed anyone the photos of this deer except him. I'm like, and my wife, and I'm like, what can I do different? What's your opinion? Should I move my feed? Should I do this? Should I do that? And really, we came to the conclusion, just stay out of the woods, get permission to access it from every which direction so you can play the wind. And yeah, that was staying out of the woods, and access is why I ended up harvesting the deer. But the week of, I guess, is the next part of the story. So he went MIA, I mean gone. And I'm talking to Summer, and she's like, I'm like, man, I think he must have been shot. I can't believe we haven't heard about it. All this stuff. And she's like, well, you don't know that. And I was like, of course, I'm thinking the worst. I'm like, no, I know it. He's dead. So November 16th, it's a Sunday. I went and chased that public dream again. That deer had gone away as well. I wasn't getting any photos of him. Like I had nothing. I'd hit a November lull at the peak of the season. Mind you, I had taken literally 10 days of vacation leading in early November to hunt. And like, it was crazy there for a while. The activity was awesome. And then like this cold front, as weird as it sounds, this crazy cold front came through and like very cold. And it changed all these deer's patterns. Like they were not pushing as much. There was like this just 5-day period that it was just horrible hunting. So Sunday, it was super windy. And I said, well, I'm going to go sit on that public property up in that core area. I'm going to go try this lower bottom part of it because it was windy. I was hoping maybe they'd be tucked away in this bottom area. So I get out there. I walk all the way out there. And I forgot my lineman's rope at the frickin' car. And I get out. I mean, it's like 45-minute walk back in there across the creek. And I finally get to the base of the tree. I'm like, I'm not going to climb up it without a linesman. I'm just going to sit here at the top of this ridge and just kind of scout, see if I see anything. And I look at my phone, and I'm sweaty. I'm mad, just not going well. I look at my phone, and I get a trail camera alert. And I pull it up, and it is this deer, the deer we're talking about, hitting or walking past the only trail cameras he would walk at 10 a.m. First daylight photo ever. I'm like, oh my God. So I haul butt out of there. I'm miles away. I get over there, get over into, I actually didn't have a stand in that area because I was staying out of there. Take my mobile setup, throw it up in a stand, sit all day, nothing. So that was a northwest wind, about 35 degrees, like a great day. But it was like 20-mile-per-hour winds. Like I said, it was really windy. So the next day, Monday, was the exact same weather. And I know this is where everyone listening to this podcast is like, so you went hunting, didn't you? I didn't. So unfortunately, my boss that I worked with for since I've been at Flambeau, his last day was the Friday before. So I had to go into the office that Monday. Like we had some projects. I had some buyers that needed some answers on some stuff. I'm like, I can't call off. I just got off a 10-day vacation stint and I know once in a deal lifetime. So I go into the office and I literally just set my stuff on my desk, and I look at my phone and it's a trail camera alert. And I'm like, there's no way. This time I had switched it to video just because he was on there, and I got 3 videos of him hitting his scrape. And then in the background, after he's hitting his scrape, I see a doe. And then the 3rd video I got was him pushing that doe in front of that camera. So I hurry up, I run, haul butt over there. The set was already in the tree. Get up in there, and I don't see anything. I don't see a deer. So then heading into day 3, I don't know, you guys got any questions before we get into day 3? Because day 3
my question is,
yes,
where were you at mentally? Like the mental, like talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, disbelief, because you got to remember, I thought the deer was dead. And I actually wrote him off. This deer was untouchable to me because I never had daylight photos of him. I explored every option as possible, expanding my home region. and I just couldn't get to his core area where he was living that time of the year. There was a reason he was living there. It was, you couldn't access it. Nobody could. So I was almost like, this deer, he's either going to have to slip up or I'm going to have to get lucky, or like I had written him off. So the fact that he is now 2 days straight on my property, walking in broad daylight, I'm just absolutely in awe. So day 3, I look at the weather, and so this is Tuesday, November 18th. I look at the weather, completely different. Blowing out of the south, 40-degree temps, like wind, very marginal, like horrible wind, like 2 miles per hour. And I'm like, I don't know. So my buddy, he went on a South Dakota duck hunting trip, and he borrowed a bunch of my swimmers and stuff like that. So he actually came to drop them off that evening. And he's sitting there, and he's holding my son, and my wife and him, and we're eating dinner. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm telling him this whole story, and he's looking at me. And he makes fun of me all the time about the whole point that I never was going to hunt behind my house, and that a chicken coop photo, like he calls me an idiot. He's like, you're so dumb. And now you got all these big deer back there. So we're sitting there talking about it. He's like, it don't matter. You're just going to go back there and shoot it anyways tomorrow. It don't matter. The wind's wrong. Just go hunting. And then Summer's like, no, you'd be an idiot not to go sit. So I'm like, yeah, probably. So November 18th, I get up, I get dressed, and I drive to that neighboring property, park at the, park there to walk in. And it's dark. And I sat there in my car. And this is where, watching those YouTube videos and all that, I really didn't, I know about scent and wind and all that. But this year I dove down. I wanted to learn how deer use topography better, and specifically thermals. It's something I've never really dove into. So I think I've watched every video on YouTube about thermals when I was bottle feeding my son at 3 a.m. all throughout this off season. So I literally sat in that car. It was dark, and I was like, man, my wind is marginal. I think my wind, the wind that will be there is going to be blowing towards where I think he's going to be coming from. I'm just going to sit here and wait. I'm going to wait for the sun to come up, and hopefully some of my thermals will start rising before I go in there and blow it all out. So I waited, like, the sun was up for 30 minutes or so, probably. And I snuck in there really slow, and I got up into my set, and I'm sitting there, and man, I was just on edge. And I use Latitude's bow strap, the with the fold down bow holder. So I never hung my bow up. Like I had it on my lap. Like I was so ready. I thought it could happen any minute. And so from, like I said, the wind was blowing to the south. So to the south of me, I hear these footsteps, and I look behind me, and it's a doe. And she walks just right past me, moseys through a little clearing that I'm set up in, and she goes to the north. Nothing behind her. Another 10 minutes go by, sitting there. And I just happened to catch legs about, I'd say, 80 to 100 yards to the north of me. And I take my binos, and I look up, and I just see that paddle on the right side of them. So at this point, I think I had a heart attack, a stroke. I fell out of the stand, pulled myself back up. Thankfully, I had a harness on. I'm shaking like you wouldn't even imagine. Like I am in rough shape, and I'm like, how am I going to shoot this deer? So I don't see him anymore. And he was heading north to south, heading my direction, and he went into a thicket. And I saw there was a deer in front of him. So I assumed it was his doe. So I kept range finding where I thought they were going to come out of. I obviously knew I had certain key landmarks around me that I knew the distance. But so I kept coming to 42 yards. 42 yards is where I think they're going to come out. And I always shoot my deer standing up. I shoot how I practice. People make fun of me. I don't take my quiver off my bow most of the time because I don't take my quiver off when I shoot. So I usually shoot a deer how I practice. I made the decision. I was standing there and I was shaking so uncontrollably that there was no way I could shoot this deer standing up. So I made the decision to sit down. And I sat there and I had this overwhelming, I couldn't see him. I had this overwhelming amount of calm. Like I just got super calm. And I was like, all right, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Because I'm sitting there originally, I'm thinking, should I hit my grunt? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I was like, just relax. And sure enough, that doe walked out of that window right where I thought they would come out at 42 yards. And she walked into this opening, just brazing her way through. And I can see him. He's coming through that thicket. He's literally getting tangled up. He's having trouble getting through it. And as he's going, he's just brazing off of the green that was there. So when I drew back, she was probably 25 yards from my stand. So she looked up and she stomped, but she didn't snort or she didn't blow. And he just turned his head to her as I anchored and let my arrow release. He had no idea. And he didn't drop or anything, completely caught him off guard, hit him perfectly. I thought everything was great. And then he turned and I saw this much arrow sticking out of him. And my heart sank. And I heard the branches, like I could hear the arrow beating off all that thicket that he's running through, tick, 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 tick. And I hear nothing. And then it's just quiet. And I'm like, oh my God, did I just shoulder a deer of a lifetime? So I'm coming unglued. I'm calling everyone. I'm calling the government. I call everyone. No one's answering their phone because it's early in the morning on a Tuesday. And I'm trying to get people's advice. And I'm sitting there. 5 minutes later, I just hear just blowing coming from the direction he ran. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldered this deer. He's blowing at me. What did you do, Dante? So I get down. I don't even go check blood, nothing. I go to my car. I drive back to my house. I walk inside. My wife gets back from dropping her son off at daycare. That's why she didn't answer her phone. And she goes, why are you back? And I'm like, I messed up. And I'm telling her, I'm like, I shot this deer and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, did you go look for blood? And I was like, no, we gotta call a drone. We gotta call a dog. We gotta get everything in here. Like, I'm not gonna bump this deer. I don't know what's going on. It's a deer of a lifetime. And she's like, well, why don't you just go look? And at this point, like, it's probably been an hour since the shot. And I'm like, I can't. No, we got to give it time. And I look at the weather, and it's going to start pouring rain in about another hour. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So I call my best friend, and he don't pick up. And I call my other friend, and he don't freaking pick up. And Summer just goes, well, when you first told me a story, you thought like everything was good. What makes you think? And I'm like, I'm mad at her. I'm like, don't ask such a stupid question. You don't know about deer hunting. I was like, because half the arrow is sticking out. And then I called my buddy finally called me back, and I'm telling him a story. He's like, well, what if that opposite leg just kicked the arrow out a little bit? I was like, maybe. I don't know. So I walk up in my wife's office. I said, let's go for a walk. So she goes out there with me, and we get to the impact point, and she's sitting there, and she's like, you shot the deer standing here? Because it's 42-yard shot. She's like, your stand's over there? And it was like I said, it was right at the edge of a thicket. She's like, it's pretty thick in here. And I'm tracking leaves, 20 yards, leaves, 20 yards. I'm like, oh my gosh. We hit this, that opening that I was going to make a food plot on. We hit that, and there's just a speck of blood. And I'm like, oh no. And I had just switched broadheads. So this is in my mind too. I have always shot fixed broadheads, QAD Exodus. Never had an issue with them. My buddy lost 2 bucks this year, and I was on those blood trails, and they were just horrible. And I said, man, I'm chasing a deer of a lifetime. I'm going to make a switch to a mechanical. I practiced with it. Believe me, I shot a lot with it. I was comfortable with the practice tip that it comes with. And then, so I'm trailing this deer, drop, and I literally look at Summer. I said, "We're done. We're backing out." At this point, we've only gone 40 yards. I'm like, "We're done." And I just look 5 to 10 yards in front of me, and it's like someone took a paint of red, a red paint can, and just poked a bunch of holes in it and just swirled it around. And I see that, and I look at my wife, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And then I just look up, and laying 20 yards in front of me behind a tree, he was laying right there.
Oh.
And I completely lost it. My Summer was recording me. I didn't know it. Sometimes I watch the YouTube and you see people reaction. You're like, like that's not genuine or whatever. So I have never showed anyone the video because it's pure emotion that I have waited my whole life for, to shoot a deer of that caliber. Actually, not even half of this caliber. And yeah, so that was the story. To have it all come together that way, it's just absolutely unbelievable. It really is. I still, like, I am dreaming to an extent. So yeah,
Amazing.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I think what's even crazier is, like, after the fact, what you were saying of, like, people showing up at your house and you getting phone calls and all of that. Like, you know, what big deer do to people, or like what it makes a, you know, how people react to it.
That's a chapter that I guess I never had to experience before. I don't know how I feel about it. It's really weird. I understand it because people get very invested in these deer, but I've never been one to think like it's my deer until after, like, I've harvested, kind of deal. Most of the people have been extremely nice. There's just been some weird situations. I mean, to give you an example, like I shot that deer around 8 a.m. It was like 7:45. I had not even putting it on social media. I had sent the photos to just key friends and like my father-in-law and a couple people. I ended up dropping it off. I tagged it. I was waiting until I wanted to get some photos with my son when he got back from daycare, and the whole family's around it. So we ended up taking some photos with him again, and my best friend finally got off work, came and seen it, and then him and I went to go drop it off at the local butcher, and I pull in the driveway, and there's a truck in my driveway already. I mean, it has not been 12 hours since I shot this deer. And I recognize the truck. It's a gentleman that hunts down the road from my hunt, or from where the deer was harvested. And he was up at the local tavern, and someone showed him a photo of me with the deer already to show how, and he told me the name of who showed it to him. I know who the guy is, but don't even know the connection of who I sent the photo to and how it got to him.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it matters. I had harvested the deer, like the chapter was closed on him, but he came out, and the first thing he said was like, "Man, I feel like somebody killed my grandma." And like, he was actually pretty standoffish. Like, he was asking me questions, like, to see my legitimacy. He didn't even know that I hunted and all this stuff, to see. And like, the minute I showed him the daylight photos and all that, it kind of changed a different tone once he seen that, like, I was as genuine as it could be and did everything by the books. But from there, I mean, I was traveling. Where was I? I was at a show or something, and my wife was home. An Amish guy came and knocked on the door wanted to see the antlers. I had two gentlemen message me on Facebook, thinking that the deer that I shot was the deer that they were chasing, because they were hunting a local or another part of the block. And they sent me these photos, very similar, but I'm like, no, it's completely different deer. And then they started backpedaling, like, just nuts, to the point where I didn't even tell you this part, Adam, but when we were at that show, I don't think we talked about this. I was sitting there talking to two Amish gentlemen at the ATA show in downtown Indianapolis. and they heard me, say that we had a plant in Middlefield, Ohio, because that's where I'm based out of. And they go, oh, that's where, I was born. I live over in this town. And they're like, oh, where do you live? And I just said the county. It's the biggest county in Ohio. They go, oh, we got some hunting property over there. Long story short, he says who he leases the property from, and it's a name I recognize. It's not far from where the deer was harvested, and they're talking about a drop tine buck they killed 2 years ago. And he shows me a photo of it, and he's like, I'm sure you heard about this. And I was like, no, I didn't. That's an awesome buck. We're talking about it. And he goes, yeah, I heard another giant was shot in the area. And I just look at him. I'm like, there ain't no way. And he's like, yeah, I actually have a photo of it. And this Amish guy pulls out his flip phone and shows me a trail camera photo of my deer from August, September, when it was still like just shedded velvet. And he turns that phone and shows it to me. And you can tell it has two distinct flyers off each side in that right paddle.
Mm-hmm.
And my jaw dropped. And I looked at him, I said, how do you have this photo? And like I said, there was a certain person just sending photos around early in the season. And it was one of his photos that just made it through the community. So it's been the aftermath has been weird. Like I was really keeping it close to heart on trying to tell people different locations where it was shot. And then like that gentleman who showed me that photo, I even fibbed to him a little bit and said it wasn't where it was. And then this third Amishman came in and he literally said the road and what house it was shot at. He knew everything.
Yep.
And I'm like, how? But small town, word travels fast. It's okay. The biggest deer I have on camera is a spike now. So that chapter has been closed. So, but yeah, the aftermath has been interesting. Something I've never had to deal with.
All right. I'm sure all the people want to know.
Yes.
Give us what you kind of break down the rack a little bit. The one thing I want to say is that right side's impressive where the paddle is, and it's just a very, very large frame deer.
Let me grab it so I can talk about it a little bit. So,
jeez.
I don't know if you guys can see that, but he has, so his left side overall is pretty symmetrical. He has, I don't even know, 1, 2.
Except for that giant turkey spur coming off the side.
6 on the left with a giant spur off his G2. On his right side, he actually looks very similar main beam wise with the same matching flyer off that side. But when I said he lost his right side early in 2024, I think something happened that caused him to grow this mule deer paddle looking right side to him. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 off the right side. But I don't quote me on these numbers. I have the sheet somewhere, but I know he had over 38 inches in mass. Is truly like, unless you held this deer and wrapped your hands around it to see how, like my hands cannot go around his base completely.
Huge.
So he was 24 and some change in overall inside spread. His G2, one was like 14, one was like 16. His overall beams were, oh gosh, I can't remember. One was like 20, or don't quote me on the beams, 26 and 23 or something. But yeah, absolutely crazy. Like I still sit here and hold him today, and it's nuts. And we'll see how it was scored for. So I have gotten it scored via Buckmaster, so they do gross without a green drying period. I do want to see if he'll truly be my dream has always been a true Boone and Crockett, and I think he will be close. And luckily I think he will qualify for it, so I'm pretty excited for that. But when they scored it for the for the Buckmaster, it's hard to see, but his right brow tine here comes all the way to the base.
Mhm.
So he couldn't take this girth measurement. He had to take it above here. So
Oh,
I lost about 4 inches in measurement there, and I'm curious to see how it will be scored in the other books. Not that it matters, but like I said, when I first saw him, I thought he was a 200 inch, and he came really close. So I couldn't be more happy. It's crazy. It's
amazing.
nuts.
Such a cool deer, such a unique deer too. If I had one critique, if that one brow tine could just been a little longer, you'd have been real close to 200. You probably would have broke 200 if you had that
Yeah,
one brow
I don't know
tine.
if we've said this. I don't know if maybe I said it, but 190 inches and 7/8 is what he ended up running.
Wow.
But you can even see, and it's hard to see in this video, his right antlers kind of where it grew back in the pedicle, it's kind of shifted. Like
Yep.
something happened where he broke this side off. And we started this on where did this all start in 2025? Well, I actually had a dummy camera out that I forgot about. And I've ended up finding it mid this season, threw it on a shelf, didn't think of anything about it. And then after I harvested the deer, I was like, man, I wonder if I had an earlier photo of him, and I just didn't realize it. I actually do have a photo of this deer it was May, where he was in velvet, just starting to grow, and that right side's just a solid club. Like, absolutely insane. So, yeah, I can't believe it. I'll never top. Even if I kill a bigger, I promise this. Even if I kill a bigger deer in my life, it won't. That is a deer of a lifetime because of what it meant to me, the story. Like, there's so many little things we didn't even cover in this. Like, there's a story about when I hunted the chicken coop probably 3 times. One time I got out early because I couldn't see my sights in the compound or in my compound bow because I didn't have an actual light up sight, but it was still legal out, and because I'm in this dark chicken coop. So I got out and I snuck out of there, and literally by the time I got to the house, he was standing at the feeder. That was in 2024. There was another story where I thought I was in the chicken coop, and like literally the rooster's behind me, like sitting on a roost 2 feet from me, and I heard this rustling, and my wife let the chickens out that day, and I told her it was like in early November, and I'm like, man, can we not let the chickens out for a couple days? Because I'm gonna try to go sit in the coop and shoot a deer. And when she would go put them back away, she's bumping the deer or whatever, and she let them out early that day, and one never made it back to the coop. So we thought maybe it got gotten by a hawk or something. And I went and sat in the chicken coop that evening, and I'm sitting there, and there's 2 does at the feeder, and I hear this slow crunching to the right of me. And I'm like, oh, here he comes. And crunch, crunch. And I'm looking, and I can't see. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, there's something right out this window, but I don't see it. And I just hear, burp, burp, burp. And I look out the freaking door, and I crack it open, and the chicken that my wife named Gypsy literally peeks her head in and walks into the coop. So it was a journey. At some point I was considering trying to use a crossbow because it was so dark and limited in the chicken coop. So I ended up going and buying a crossbow that I have yet to shoot. So that's just hanging over there now. Like, the journey that I went on with this deer was unbelievable. I learned a lot. I learned that the little things make a big difference. It really does. Staying out of the woods. He was comfortable in my area. Access, like I said, he came downwind pretty much. It was marginal. He came from downwind of me the day I shot him. I don't know if it made a big difference, but I truly do believe the thermals and waiting to go in, it did change that day and change that hunt.
Love it.
And you were saying what? Your house is listed now for like 2.2 million?
Yeah, that's
Something
right.
like that?
That's right. Trail camera photos are the first 5 photos in the listing. And they're all, like I said, they're all spikes because that's the biggest I have now.
No, I mean, like I said, in the opening, we were trying to do this podcast for a long time, and all of the stuff that had kind of got in the way of just doing a podcast with Dante.
Yep.
But again, like you said, everything led up to this, and what a fun story and just conversation. And so, Nate, did it live up to the hype?
Oh, dude, that's what you dream about right there. That's what you dream about. Changing, living, seeing a deer like that, the roller coaster of emotions. That's what chasing one deer does. Is the mind. It's a lot different. It's fun in its own way, and I would love to have the roller coaster events on a 190, let alone what I here in Michigan. I don't really see too many of those. I've only seen one, and I was on the other side of that roller coaster. So it's pretty cool to hear your story, man. I appreciate you sharing that with us. It's really good. A lot of good info and in your story for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen. Like I said, I played a very little role in this whole story. The deer is what I want people to hear about and to understand the caliber. Because, yes, I live in a big buck state, but I've been hunting since we talked about when I started this, and I have not gotten deer of that caliber on trail cameras often. So it's not like you just walk around every corner and see a deer like that. And this one specifically, the reason he got that big was because his core area was so small. I think people overlook that often. Now, I know he did some wandering and he probably went a few miles here and there, but it was just such a little pinpoint on a map that he had everything he needed. He had water, he had big oak flats, he had everything. So ultimately it was a little bit of luck and a doe that really helped me, that he was locked down with. He was with that doe 3 days in a row, and finally day 3 I just made sure I was in the tree stand.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you want to watch some football this afternoon, so that's why we're doing it this morning. What's new or exciting over at Flambeau these days?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys haven't checked out the Formula Bow case, it's probably the most unique bow case on the market. It's fully adjustable. You can adjust it. It's foam free. So we partner with Night Eyes to tie down the bow. It's pretty unique case in itself. But other than that, we got some things cooking. We might be looking into some new technology in some cases that we're hoping that's fresh as of walking around SHOT Show last week. Hopefully we can get that up and rolling in the upcoming years. But yeah, a lot of we're working on getting our website fully revamped, and we're going to start doing some pretty cool promotions and getting some pretty cool opportunities to our end users. A lot of people think of us on the duck hunting side of things because of our duck decoys, but we've had a lot of growth in the deer decoys and the bow case side of things recently. So it's been a lot of fun. It's a fun brand to work with because we're not hunt or fit. We're both sides. So my season is hectic all the time. We're a small team that still a family-owned company that is just trying to keep up with the hectic times.
Awesome. Where can people follow along with everything that's going on with you and with Flambeau and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Flambeau_outdoors. For me, I don't really post much on social, but you can check out, just look up my name and you'll find some cool stuff. Probably see a lot more of baseball photos when I'm at the ballpark and my dog and my family more than the hunting side of things. But I don't know if I've even posted a photo of this deer yet on my social media. Yeah.
My guy.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yep, gentlemen, thank you so much.